Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
And good afternoon, Vancouver. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. And here I am with Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hello, Darren, co-host.
Hello, Giuseppe. Talk Recovery. Awesome to be back. I feel like we should be whispering, though. That was a little quiet intro.
It was a bit quiet. Yeah, hopefully people heard it. Yeah, I'm not too sure. But anyway, we're not in studio. Obviously, you can tell we're still doing Zoom/Facebook, rebroadcasting on the radio. Planning on getting downtown back into the studio. Just a lot going on for those of you following the news. And, there's the housing issue that's going on with the tent city going on the sidewalks. The studio is right in the middle of all that. Co-op radio is right down there. And we were supposed to be in the studio by now. We put that all on hold. Just don't really want to go down there in the middle of the Thursday, every Thursday, to kind of be around all that. No judgment against all of it. It's just not a very safe space right now for some. Police are down there trying to evacuate. It's a safety hazard around the buildings and so forth. So I just hope all that gets solved. Obviously, housing is needed, support's needed, but this is a show about recovery, and we really believe that more investments in recovery-oriented systems of care at an early age, not when you wait till somebody is completely homeless on the street, but teenagers in high school and universities, before we end up destroying our lives and living on the streets, having some recovery-oriented systems of care in place. That's what Portugal does. That's what Switzerland does. You may not read about it because it's not very sexy in the news to read that. But that's what they do. They have recovery-oriented systems of care in Europe, and they've been doing that for decades, and they don't seem to have a crisis like we do here in Canada. So, but I am excited because we're interviewing some great guests today, and we're going to get right into our shows pretty quickly. Just want to give a shout out to everybody that was part of Vancouver Pride last week. Was that last week? I don't even remember. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Time's flying by here. Our sober float was huge. The sober lounge was huge. Hundreds of volunteers, marchers. I got emails and calls from people saying, hey, you may be proud to be sober. Not just me, but like us, because they saw our float. It was the loudest and the biggest float. And so shout out to everybody that was part of. And we're going to be continuing our conversation about sober spaces at Pride events, because it is important to have sober spaces at Pride events. There's a great article in the Vancouver Pride Guide about sober spaces at Pride events. And to talk about that more on today's show, we're bringing on one of my favorites. She was on Canada's Drag Race, but she's been part of Intoxicated and Clean, Sober, and Proud since, for many, many years. We've got Kendall Gender on the show. Hello, Kendall. Yes, thank you for being on our show. Yes, you're with your so busy schedule. We're so happy that you were able to be part of our show. So welcome.
Thank you. Absolutely. No matter how busy I will get in my life, this event is so near and dear to me. So I'm so happy to be a part of it again.
Yeah, thank you. And that message got filtered to us by your managers, because you've been on Canada's Drag Race. Your life has definitely changed. You're all over Canada and the world. You've been traveling. I saw some photos on your Facebook. We'll talk more about that and everything. So big congratulations to you to continuing your recovery journey, continuing your drag story, continuing your career and being successful at it. So first off, just a big congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, if I knew I was going to get compliments, I would have come on every day.
yeah, full of compliments. I mean, I was hooked to the show, watching it and everything. And so it's big fan. But I'm not just a big fan. You're going to be There you are, center stage,
Yes.
Intoxicated 2022 next week. So before we get into the show and everything like that, you're on our show. You have a personal story of recovery and overcoming addiction and all that kind of stuff. Something that a lot of people don't know. So I'm glad that you're out about it, and Recovering Out Loud helps people. So why do you, like, you've shared your story? What is one of the reasons why you like sharing your story, and you did on air for thousands to see?
Yeah, for me, sharing my story has always been super therapeutic in a way. It's never really been something that I've wanted to just deal with myself, if that makes sense. For me, a lot of my recovery came from community building, and it came from relationship buildings, whether that was in meetings or just within like the queer community, the drag community, all of this kind of stuff. It really came from those sort of like intersectional relationships, if you will. And for me, a part of that was talking. And like a lot of us in recovery, we love talking, and it
Talk
helps.
recovery,
So,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it helps, right? So for me, that has always really helped me stay present and stay sober and sort of stay aware of like the journey that I want to be on. And like, I just think about it in one way, like if I can share my story, even if it isn't like, obviously a super public platform such as like Drag Race, I just imagine like all of the people that would have watched that and then just been more comfortable with their own recovery, just knowing that there's like less sort of like stigma attached to it.
Did you have, go ahead, Darren.
Well, I was just considering, the parallels. Like you even mentioned, like coming out with your recovery, that, it's the same for some coming out as their sexual identities, and I'm wondering what your experience in parallels, like which one was one harder, or was it the same thing on an emotional, spiritual level?
Good question.
That's a really good question. Wow.
That's why I'm here.
I think the biggest difference. Sorry, my cat is obviously coming right into the screen for whatever reason. Hello. I think the biggest difference would definitely have been like the age in which both of those things happened to me. Like I came out at about like 13 years old. So my like mental state was quite different. And I think I was a lot more at the time, like afraid of people finding out about me coming out. I was a lot more like scared because I was really concerned with the idea of like fitting in and being the same as everyone. Whereas when I got sober, much like later in my life, it was, it was almost 10 years after. I was 24, 25 by the time I got sober. So, but I wasn't, I don't know, I was more comfortable, I think, within my identity and who I was. And I wasn't ashamed of being sober. I think that was the sort of biggest difference between those two things, just because of like the time in which it happened in my life.
And so many people, when I work in a rehab center, I don't really do client care, but you hear the stories. It's just like, I'll never drink again. Like, I don't know if I can do that. And then there's the whole, like, this is the rest of my life. Like, not being able to have fun. They think like life's boring when they get sober. So
yeah.
You obviously work in a lot of clubs in recovery. There's that whole conversation going to clubs and being sober and the temptation and all that. So did you have that moment? You say you didn't have a struggle coming out as being in recovery and so forth. So, but how did you get through that, especially in early recovery? I mean, over time you get used to it, but what kind of suggestions do you have for people? What was your experience? You're a year, you're in a club, there's booze everywhere. What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually, in the beginning stages of sobriety, I actually wasn't doing drag. So I had started drag prior, and then it sort of, those two things just like weren't matching up for me, unfortunately, at the time of my life. And then I stopped, using and drinking, and then I also stopped drag. So I stopped drag for about like 8 months or so, give or take. So I never actually stepped foot in a nightclub, in like any sort of like scene like that, for quite a few months. And that was just for me personally. They just didn't align at the time. But then by the time I had got back into drag, I sort of then found this new like love and appreciation for it, without obviously drinking. So it was kind of this beautiful moment, if you will. And for me, I just sort of like, I don't know, I started to see see it as more of like an art form instead of just like an excuse to party, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah.
I was actually, wondering, in your perspective, that is drag in essence an artistic platform? Is it an expression of artistry and creativity? For some, I don't want to put them all in a box, but is for some, like a desire to transition into that identity, or is it simply, like that artistry and character and expression and very satisfied within one's own body?
Yeah, so that's a very, very common question, actually, and like I think you worded it eloquently, so thank you. But I think there's two identities that people need to realize. There is just the drag, which is the entertainment. Sort of consider it more like a theater presentation. We are putting on a character. We are wearing the costumes, doing the makeup, that kind of stuff, and that is a separate identity. But there is also a transgender identity where someone wants to obviously, change the gender that they were physically born into, and sort of reach the identity that they are truly, inside. So those are two different things. Now, those two things can also link up. So there are also trans performers that also do drag, but they don't necessarily have to. Like for me, I identify as a male who does drag. So for me, it's just it's a costume, it's an act, if you will, to sort of put on. But I don't identify as transgender. But I know a lot of people that have started in the drag form, and drag has made them or allowed them to realize their true identity, whatever that may be. So it's kind of different for everyone. It's sort of a case by case basis. But I think it's important to remember that they're not always the same.
They're not always the same, and it's talking about it is how we get to understand what to do. Like at the beginning of the show, do we acknowledge you as Kenneth? Do we acknowledge you as Kendall? And is it he, or is it? And so when you're in Kendall, it's you go by she, because it's would it be for convenience? Well, why would you go by she when you're dressed as Kendall?
Yeah, so it's the character that I'm putting on. The character that I'm putting on is like female presenting, and it's just sort of like easier to sort of obviously use those pronouns when you're in drag. But I do find that sometimes if people are using, like, if they use male pronouns to me in drag, they're doing it to be rude. Like they're purposely trying to be like, "Hey, dude." Or hey, you guy over there. Like they're 9 times out of 10. They're doing it to be a dick.
Good to know.
Good to know. Yeah. So don't do that. And you know what? You're fabulous in character, and you're fabulous as Kenneth. So appreciate that. You're going to be performing at Intoxicated.
Yay!
And I don't even know. I should count. I'm bad at math. So let's say it's been 7 years, maybe 8 that we've been doing Intoxicated. What do you think? And thank you. Like, so what's this mean to you to be part of Intoxicated?
Yeah, so for me, I actually remember one of the years. This is a little bit of a down story, but it gets better. Okay, so walk with me on this journey. Yeah, but I remember there was one year I had tickets. I believe it was Alaska.
Okay.
And I had tickets, and I was so excited just to go and attend. And unfortunately, I was in the height of my addiction. So I actually didn't make it to the show. Unfortunately, there was no sleep in between the one night to the next night, so I didn't make it. I didn't make it to the show, and I remember being at home, so just like in my head, depressed that like I missed this opportunity to see one of my favorite drag artists. It was just very, very, very sad. So then I think it was 2 years later and then I was into sobriety, and I got the opportunity to perform with BRATPACK at one of the shows.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was such a monumental thing because it was such a pivotal, it was the last Pride that the Pride that I missed out on. It was the last Pride that I was using. And then I got clean a few months later. So it was really this like turning moment that I really remember in my life. So to then get the opportunity to kind of come back as a sober performer and be so celebrated in that space and really have that opportunity to know that it was like one of the biggest events that I think happens for any of the prides in BC, because we usually have the biggest headliners, if you will, not to toot our own horns, but we really pull out all the stops for this event. And to be able to be a part of it as a sober performer, and just kind of like, I don't know, be like in that environment, and like know that I can go there and I'm going to be supported in my sobriety and as a performer. It's just been so cool to be able to do it, and like been able to do it like since doing it with BRATPACK, doing it on my own, and like coming back basically every year since then has been like, it's been so special and cool.
That's amazing. Beautiful. Can I ask that part of you getting sober, you know, maybe believing that performing could only take place under the influence, to be given the confidence to, you know, like any sort of creative expression in front of people, most, you know, people that are consuming alcohol will maintain that that's what I need, you know, to do this. And yet then later on, if you ask somebody in recovery, it's the best thing I've ever done, confidence, esteem, like I perform better, you know what I mean? But what about that transition from sobriety? Like, was there fear? Were you worried about, you know, other performers and how they were behaving behind the scenes? And what was it like? Did you feel like you had to write that off at some point, maybe getting sober? Yeah,
I mean, on the journey, I never went back. So once I've been sober, I've stayed sober, even through performing and all of that kind of stuff. I've been very like lucky and blessed in that way. But for me, I've just I sort of developed a new sense of confidence, exactly as you're saying. So I now live in this space, and especially in sobriety, where I ask for things that I need. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's all been roses every single show, and it's been super easy, and I've never thought about it. Like, of course that would be naive to say. But that being said, like, when I do have those moments where I am feeling triggered, or I don't feel, you know, supported or safe in those situations, I now have the confidence to ask for what I need. So like, if people are, you know, using around me, for example, I now know that I can comfortably like, hey, this is not the place for this. You don't need to be doing this around me, and I'm not comfortable. You know what I mean? So now, but whereas before, I would have never been comfortable or confident enough to be able to ask for what I need. So I found that sort of translated into a lot of elements of my life, but also within sobriety.
You know, that's a great definition of what recovery is too. A lot of people, you know, they think about recovery and they think it's, you know, not using, which is a part of it, but it's all this. It's building self-esteem. It's, you know, what is recovery? I have the confidence now to say this isn't okay with me. I have the self-esteem to be okay with what those people think when I say that. Because before, I mean, I remember walking up and down Davie Street and being like, I just want the world to love me, even though I don't want any of them to know me. You know what I mean? It was just like a really bizarre thing. It's like, you know, I want everyone to love me, but I you know, if anybody really knew me, it would be a different story. So you know, that's what this is all about. You know, I had a friend, she was working a practicum here where I work, and she brought a bunch of her friends to the Sober Lounge in Vancouver. That was a couple of weeks ago, and you know, her friends were all like, you know, sober, like, why would we go there, right? You know, kind of thing. And you know, I talked to them after, and they had the time of their life. They just, you know, they were blown away by your performance and by they just couldn't believe how much fun they had, and that's what this is all about. You know, like that it's inspired. When I was 13, not 13, I wasn't that young. When I was 15, I went to Toronto Pride. I don't ever remember seeing the word sober, clean, or substance free, or none of that. It was, you know, mushrooms, ecstasy, drugs, you know, all of that stuff. That's all I saw. And so the point of all this is having big signs, so it's impossible to walk by not seeing. Like, everybody knew that there was a sober lounge in the heart of the village on Vancouver Pride, and everyone's going to know there's a sober lounge here at New West Pride for Intoxicated. So the event's sold out, so that's amazing news. You know, there may be some tickets at the door, you know, later on as we fill up and we actually know how much space we have. So if you didn't get tickets, you know, sorry, but we'll see if there's some available, and you're on with the BRATPACK. So I want to, you know, spend a couple of minutes as well. You're doing a number, plus you're doing a number with BRATPACK. So, there's obviously a bond there and a friendship there. You're on the show. I don't know how much you can talk about the show, but how do you compete with friends? That's what I want to know.
Honestly, I always really loved the idea that we got on the show together. I
Okay.
think that a lot of my drag career has been tied up with those girls and with BRATPACK. So like even going back to the story that we were just talking about, my first time back on stage after 8 months was with the BRATPACK. That's what made me come back to drag. So much of my like drag career and happiness has come with like performing together with them. So even it made sense for us to be together on the show. Of course, there was competition, friendly competition between all of us. But there is even outside of the show, right? Like, of course, right? Like we always want to make sure that like we're keeping the other one like leveled up. But it's a friendly competition, and it never gets catty between us like too deeply. So we're always there to inspire each other. I mean, you saw we didn't even fight on the show, so that's the relationship outside of the show as well. So I was so happy that we were all on it together, to be honest.
Nice, perfect. Well, we've got, as you can see there on the poster, Naomi Smalls, Brooklyn Heights, Evie Oddly, Aquaria. They're all coming in from RuPaul's Drag Race. Very, very wonderful to have them come to the show. And then the BRATPACK, Cynthia Kiss, Geometric, and obviously Alma and Jaylene. They're going to be emceeing the show, as they do in many years, are some of our favorites there. Oh, and we can't forget Kingfisher. We're super excited to have Kingfisher, because I find sometimes we always tend to go the one direction with our performers. So I'm really glad to make sure that there's a king on the stage, and so that happens. So if you want to come out, we are sold out, but there may be tickets available at the door halfway through the show, so you can check that out. And we really just want to appreciate you coming on to the show again, Kendall. We know that you're super busy. So what's in store for you? What can we're going to push this out so everybody sees it. So what message do you have for your fans?
I think that just supporting this event is super, super important. I think it's amazing to know that regardless of your like sobriety journey, whether you are a sober individual or not, just like knowing that this event exists, I think takes a lot of the stigma away for people. Because like you said, you can have such a good time, and it is cool. You know what I mean? Like you want to come, you want to be a part of it. And it's just so amazing to have something so elevated with this sort of like heavy relationship that I have, obviously, to my sobriety. So I think that would be my message. And the show is going to be so good. I won't give away too much, but Giuseppe has requested some real big things for my number. So we're gonna turn it out. No, I love it. I am when I got that first email, I was like, oh, it's on. It's happening.
Perfect. I was just like, we got to make a big, loud statement.
It's gonna be huge.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways we can stop overdoses is, but like you say, community connection, fostering those conversations, and, behind all the glitz and the glamour and the sparkles and the colors and the rainbows and everything else that comes along with Pride, there's a message here. One, be yourself. Two, love yourself. Be healthy. You deserve it, and we all deserve it. And you know what, if you want to make social change, like this is an accumulation of hundreds of volunteers since 2008 to finally get to a place where we can actually close streets down and do all this. So big shout out to everyone that's been part of since 2008. And so thanks for being on the show. We'll see you on Saturday, everybody. Intoxicated, come to US Pride. New West Pride is 3 p.m. till 8 p.m. on Columbia Street. They got vendors, food trucks, whole thing, lots of stages. Intoxicated is going to be in front of the Anvil Center. It's a gated area with tickets, and it's part of the New West Pride. So we'll be in front of Anvil Center, and we'll see you on Saturday. Kendall, you have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Awesome. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. And we're talking to Kendall Gender from the BRATPACK. Kendall Gender, one of Canada's top drag queens. And we are going to say goodbye to Kendall. And we are definitely having an opportunity to talk about our Pride events that would took place. Some people there's those questions like, oh, why do you do this and all that? And you know what, Darren, really weird this year. We've had to delete hundreds, not just 10, hundreds of comments from our social media posts about our Pride events.
Yeah.
And some of them were really, really just like, does your mother see you on Facebook? Like, how could you say that about people, about us? It gets, you almost want to throw in the towel a little bit. You're like, okay, I didn't sign up for this, right?
No. I mean, there's a reason why we still use the term disadvantaged people or visible minorities, or whatever. It almost sounds like we're putting a stigma, like Kendall Gender doesn't seem to be a disadvantaged person in my eyes, but unfortunately remains because of this, because of the ignorance that still exists in regular society, and the free for all that social media allows people to make comments. And you know what, I appreciate the fact that we can now put a name to the ignorance, and sometimes a picture, not to do anything, but just to know clearly who these people are. Like, I mean, it's an immediate cutoff out of my life, and a mandatory, relationship in my life requires, respect and support for all. Like, so I get it. But I'm not surprised, and I love the fact that is still there, because it makes me want to support and push and advocate and just talk about that more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to all the haters, we're gonna go louder, we're gonna go bigger, and we're just I mean, it boggles my mind that you would take 2 minutes out of your day to sit there and try to spread hate and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's complicated. I mean, it takes about a half an hour every morning, and then another half an hour in the early evening to go through the social media comments. And we have a big social media reach, and you don't see them because we do a really good job at cleaning them up, but literally it's been hundreds and hundreds of comments. So if you ask yourself, or ask, or talk about, oh, we don't need Pride Day, why do you need Pride Day? Because of that. Like, I mean, when you post a picture of a guy and a girl, as a couple on social media, you don't get hundreds of negative comments. You know what I mean? And when we post something that, has to do with just a show, it creates that conversation. And so, yeah, and Last Door, which is, behind Untoxicated and Clean Sober Proud, supports its community. That's Eric Taylor live on the radio. So it's one of those things that we continue to support all of our diverse clientele that comes here. And so many of our new guys that are identifying the queer community, they participated in building the float and being at the Sober Lounge, and they're all excited about this Saturday's event. It's a big deal. I mean, one guy, Frankie, he's blown away. He's just like, like he said the magic words, Darren, I never thought my life could be like this. This was the best time I've ever had in my life. And he's in his late 20s. So yeah, I mean, you stop overdoses, like that's how you do it, right? You connect people. And I remember being tired and exhausted. And when Frankie said that, it was just like, yeah, thanks you gave me a little bit of pep in our step.
And I know 100% that part of that perspective, that when you say, I never thought I could feel this way, I never thought it could be like this, I never thought I could have so much fun, I never thought I could have so much confidence or esteem. Like, when someone's saying that, it's because they've been witness to others becoming vulnerable and expressing themselves out loud, whether through queer performances or sharing their soul, in front of a group of people about, the challenges they faced and how they got through it. Like, that's it. Yeah. Like, so this is just another push, another, support for those that have always been sort of pushed aside to the gutter of the street, to the barrios, to the, the skid rows, or, to the closets, right? As you say, I mean, it's like anything we can do that can, promote and support however we express ourselves, whether it's just being clean or a drag performance.
Yeah. And about recovery day is coming up on September 10th. So if you haven't seen all the posters and all that kind of stuff, we've got an amazing headline. Darren's going to be emceeing the stage at 6 and 6. And we've got Tom Cochran, Snotty Nose Res Kids, Busty in the Bass. So it's going to be amazing talent. There's like almost 200 vendors setting up booths. There's going to be so much going on. Activities like rock climbing and virtual reality pods, square dancing lessons, axe throwing, giant kid zone with Fred Penner, and definitely a full day of activities. Make sure you got your running shoes on, because there's lots of walking involved. It's spread over 7 city blocks. So you can go to recoverydaybc.ca. You know what? We're supposed to have a second guest coming on the show, but unfortunately, they have not logged in yet. So I'm going to just call it a show. I think it's been great. Victoria hasn't logged in. She was going to talk about her personal story and how yoga saved her life. But unfortunately, she's already 8 minutes behind in logging in. Sent a message.
You feel like you can rant about for 25 minutes?
You know what? Between this Pride, we got Family Day next week. We got Recovery Day next week. These events don't just happen, right? And the amount of conversations you have to have with people to put these on, and then sifting through the negative comments and just remembering all the positive experiences takes effort too. Where did it go? Probably the best gift I've gotten so far. Do you see it?
I see the feeling wheel. Do you have a feeling wheel pillowcase as well?
Yeah, it was a pillowcase too. Yeah. So my friend Sarah, she's like, "How are you feeling today?" This was after Vancouver Pride. And I just looked at her. I was like, "Oh, it's Sunday." She's like, "That's not a feeling." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." Right. And so she's all like, "No, it's not." So then 2 days later, she's like, "Here." And it's a nice one. Like, it just spins. So anyway, and then guess what? I did it this morning. And guess where the feeling wheel went to? It went to the feeling that says proud. I was just like, well, isn't that just higher power? So we got good news, everybody. Guess who just logged in? There we go. So you're listening.
The show moves on.
Yeah, the show moves on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5. We're live every Thursday. Sometimes we take a vacation, but we'll be live at noon to 1, and then we replay on 100.5 FM. The show's brought to you by New West Recovery, which is made up of Last Door and Westminster House. And we've got Victoria in the meeting. Let's see if she can hear us, and let's let her know that she's actually live. Victoria, are you there? Hi, Victoria. You're on mute.
Hi.
Hi there. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
no problem. Are you ready? Are you ready to be on Talk Recovery? How you feeling?
Sure, yeah.
Good.
Awesome, great.
So we have Victoria H. Welcome to the show. This is a story of your story of yoga and recovery. Little bit of both. What came first?
Well, drug use and recovery. Yeah.
Okay, so there wasn't yoga under the influence then, trying to make it.
Well, there was relapse and then doing drugs while doing yoga.
Okay.
And then getting clean and deciding that that's what I wanted to do with my career, and weaving it within my recovery as well as sharing it with other people in recovery. But there was a time when I would go to the beach by myself and get high and do yoga. It was a very strange time.
But understandable and very relatable to many people's story, where for whatever our own personal reasons that we just don't quite connect to that whole social group model of recovery where it's people telling me what to do, and I would always try to venture into something that, you know, is holistic and, you know, better for me than perhaps using, but it was always alone. It was always a solo situation, you know, be it yoga or, you know, I did sleep deprivation for a while. And I mean, pretty soon I'm just doing this thing, this holistic thing under the influence, and clearly not working. So I guess the point of your story, it would be that finding recovery allowed you the pursuit of yoga and bring it to a whole new level.
Yeah, and through like working the 12 steps and working program through Narcotics Anonymous, it helped when I went to school to become a yoga instructor, learning like the way of Buddhism. It's very similar in like non-harming thoughts, like the yamas and all of that included. It made it a lot easier for me to understand the spiritual side as well, in like working the 12 steps and, you know, not lying and not stealing and not doing all of these things that are bad for us as people and bad for everyone around us. Karma, right? So it's like very easy to understand. They're very similar concepts and ideas.
Right. I mean, the letting go aspect, the acceptance of what is, and, you know, like it's so much in early recovery. I mean, I think we do it while we're still very insane and self-centered and whatnot. And that takes a little while, right? I mean, like how long, you know, was the getting clean and recovery process until you started to adjust to those, you know, relatable issues with yoga and Buddhism and recovery? Was it?
Well, I mean, I started using drugs when I was 13 years old. I went into treatment at 17, but didn't really understand what it was about. At 17 years old, I didn't like understand my disease. I didn't understand what it meant to like live the steps in my life. And then, you know, relapse, like live life on drugs, got clean, relapsed, got clean, went to treatment. I didn't really fully grasp the concept of everything and how important it is to live an everyday life until this last time that I got clean, and everything kind of just clicked where, you know, I stopped judging others and like loving myself and building myself up and like doing that through movement and through yoga and through working the 12 steps, right? Like it took me a really long time to get it, right?
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
something's working.
Well, I mean, that was the point of my question, where it's, I mean, so many of us, I think, you know, they get that, like that feeling or that experience of being clean, you know, whether it's the first time or the 17th time, of like, oh, this is what I want. And you know, it's a true desire. It's, you know, it's a true and genuine feeling, but quite often jump into something, you know, that they're just not yet mentally prepared for, right? So that, you know, your experience requires a little preparation of mind and body before, you know, like studying yoga, I'm sure. What are your credentials in that? Like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, you know, studying and experience and, you know, practical work, right? To become just even a teacher.
Yeah, and I mean, like with the 200-hour, like I just have the basic right now as well as like fitness training, but again, like the program has really helped me be other centered. And like when I teach a class, like my goal is like I give myself to the class to help them understand the concepts and connect with their body. Because like in using drugs and like the misery, like we just disconnect from self. We're like so miserable with who we've become that we, you know, can't even look in the mirror when we first get clean. Like I found that was a big struggle for me. And so like finding that ability to like connect with self through movement and through the practice, and like learning to like love our bodies despite if we have limitations, like truly loving self as well. Like I bring in like the emotional and spiritual side of it. like allowing us to fill ourselves up with spiritual principles, like in meditation and through breath work, like things that we want to work on. Like I bring that into the meditation as well. So like recovery has enhanced my ability to be a yoga teacher. I've found
And
that's what resonates.
You know,
with
it's
people.
also just being a teacher. So you can translate what you just said, and it could be yoga, it could be dance lessons, it could be mixed martial arts. You know, we just talked about this with Kendall, our first guest. It's like, you know, so many people are trying to define what recovery is, and really, I'm like, there is no definition because it changes on every topic in life. And what you just said is another definition of recovery. It gives you that opportunity to be a teacher. It's like you've got some lived experience, you know, and everyone's stuck on, you know, if you don't have a PhD, you can't help people with addiction. And if you don't have a master's, you can't help people with, you need to be this master's level counselor. It's like one addict helping another addict has been the best thing that's helped me. And I've seen it happen to help thousands. So it's the same thing with yoga and so forth. It's like, you know, recovery gives you that opportunity to be able to get people to connect. I mean, like I get what you mean when you say we're not connected to our body when we're out there and addiction. And like when you go to the downtown east side and you see what you see, it's that disconnect. Like you don't wash your hair and you don't clean your, you know, there's that, you know, even if you have a sink, you know what I mean, you still don't use it because your main focus is getting to more and more to use. So there's another thing to this. I mean, I've had lots of friends I've known over the years and stuff that, you know, they get clean and then they start things and I use MMA because that's one thing. Or, you know, right now there's this soccer thing going on with some people that I know. Yoga, I remember some people that were great friends. I'd see them at my home group and it's like, oh, where's so-and-so? Oh, she's at yoga. Oh, where's so she's at, and next thing you know, they're doing yoga 3 times a day and all that kind of stuff. So has that happened to you? And what do you do so that doesn't happen to you?
Like overdoing it.
like
Overdoing it.
obsession.
Yeah. Like it becomes an obsession. It's like I go to the gym twice a day and I only eat chicken breasts and, you know, shakes and that's it, but with 10 bananas in it. And, you know, I like it just everything becomes about this.
I think, yeah, I mean, for me, like my focus is eating healthy and like not putting drugs and alcohol into my body and like honoring my body with movement. Again, I'm kind of a workaholic. I don't have a day off right now. I teach a lot, but I think when it becomes like you're giving up other things or you become self-centered and like push important things aside so you can do that practice, or you feel guilty in like having a cookie or whatever, like if you're sticking to a meal plan, like I think it's just when it's like your thoughts, like if your thoughts become negative surrounding it, if you get irritated that you have to miss a class and like lose it and you're not that like zen person because you have to miss a class or miss like your practice, I think that's when it can become a problem.
Some good points there.
You gotta have some ebb and flow with life, right? So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
you need to be able to self-regulate without the yoga class sometimes, right?
Good point. Very good life lesson there.
You say you're a teacher and you teach like new people in recovery, you know, very inexperienced, perhaps people that have never done yoga before. I mean, that's intimidating, I think, you know, for someone to see how, I don't know, how sore I am. I remember feeling like, you know, how little I could actually do. And that affects my ego because, you know, I'm going to hurt myself to try to show that, like, you know, how stretchy I am. And I'm just not there. So it has to be, you know, something led, you know, quite well in the fact of not hurting yourself, don't do too much. So what is it like with someone that's new in recovery? And I mean, what's their experience after, say, one session?
I definitely notice a difference between like general public non-addicts and people fresh in recovery, and the ego part of it coming in like freshly detoxing and thinking that they can hold a plank for a minute and like the form is awful and there's this ego and they want to do it all and they want to participate without like realizing their body's limitations.
Yeah.
So I like to make it fun. I like to joke around. I definitely always bring focus to the ego because practicing yoga is a practice. No one is ever perfect in participating and practicing yoga. Even if someone can lift up into a handstand, there's still more that they can learn within their body and their practice. So I like to make it fun. I make jokes, but definitely notice a difference in people in recovery coming in and like thinking that they can do everything. And another thing too, people think that it's just stretching, right? That you have to be flexible. First of all, you don't have to be flexible and you don't have to be strong, but you have to be willing to try and move through the discomfort and like challenge yourself to hold something for another breath. Like just breathe through it, but also know when to take a break, and that's okay too. Shavasana and child's pose, take it anytime.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's so true as far as even in like the whole, definition of recovery is like, it's just as good to know how little flexible we actually are in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like to actually know how poor a shape I am in, whether it be physically or how unable I am to just sit still and
That's
allow
huge.
someone to guide me into some positive thinking. I remember an experience where like all of a sudden I'm told to just sit on my mat and take a deep breath and like, respect myself and consider myself. And I started to cry. Like it was like an awareness of, immediately I did not like yoga, right? Because but what that first class taught me was how little respect I had for myself, my body, like how I lived. I just and I was almost like not worthy enough to allow myself the moment. Is that like an essence of yoga? Did that just happen by fluke or with the right teacher, or is that the point? Like you say, it's not just about stretching.
Yeah, the point is to connect. The point is to open up and let go of tension and stress that we hold in the body. Like a good yoga teacher understands that like we hold stress in our hips and in our shoulders. And when we release that tension through like breath work and opening exercises and poses, stuff comes up. And when we quiet the mind and just focus on the sensations in the body, yes, emotions rise up and you have to just allow them to happen. Stuffing them back down is what we do. We stuff drugs in to cover the fear or cover the anxiety, and like actually just controlling the breath and like feeling the moment. Like you can move through and grow as a human being within yoga and also within recovery. And then like if stuff comes up, like I say, talk about it with your support, because it's something that you're uncovering that you didn't know was there. Yoga uncovers things. That's why I feel I'm so zen, because I use every time that I teach a class, I use it to like check in with self, and it's so healing. But yeah, it can bring up deep stuff you didn't realize was there. Yeah.
And is that the meditation piece that goes along with yoga? You're able to calm down and listen, and be able to be more aware of what's going on. Like, is it the meditation piece of yoga that gets you to that place?
It can be any part of it. It can be holding a yang stance, holding a pose for 12 full breaths, working through like the tension in the muscles and building that strength and that fire. And then like you become aware of your thoughts, that like your mind tells you that you can't do it. Your mind tells you to give up. And then like you can realize that like, oh, that's you in life. Your mind just tells you to use drugs, that you can't get through this emotion. And then you connect it through like the pose that you're holding. You can either turn that into strength and power and hold it for another breath, hold it for another 2 breaths, or give in and come down to the mat. Like it's, I notice that people who don't participate in my classes don't stay clean. And I notice that a lot when they just give up or they just decide that it's not for them instead of at least giving it a try. It's an interesting indicator for me as well. Like,
So
you
it's
just
like
give
a,
it a
it's like a
try.
refusal.
Why not try something new? That's what we're here for, right?
Right. It's because it's a challenge, because
Yeah.
it presents emotion. It's I'm not in control if I'm allowing it, right? And I have to participate in something willingly that I'm not in control, where I'm putting myself not in control. If I go in there and all of a sudden, like, I don't like that feeling, that's it. That's that unwillingness and that refusal. That's going to be in recovery. That's going to be in, being truthful with someone, in every area. So I can definitely see the relationship there.
Yeah, it's like, what can I learn? Why don't I like this? Why am I having an issue with this? Why don't I want to participate? Like, why don't I want to go to a meeting and meet people? Why don't I want to introduce myself? Why don't I want to work on this question and step work? Why don't I want to hold this chair pose for 10 breaths? Like, what is it that's preventing us from becoming a stronger human being emotionally and physically?
So in your journey of both recovery and yoga, what has been some of the outcomes? What have you noticed about who you've always been, or character traits that were never present that have really realized themselves through yoga? Like recovery, we learn these principles, surrender. Are you more patient? Are you more easily accepting of chaos around you, or not being in control? Like, do you have a real personal experience with anything that surprised you?
I mean, my recovery has taught me like tolerance and patience and acceptance. And then like I've discovered that like my sense of humor and my personality that like I've had since I was a kid, it was very outgoing. And then like drugs came into the picture and I became very like a shell of a person and hated being out in public. And now it's like, as soon as I get in front of a class, this inner light shines bright and I get to like show my care and compassion and like my true passion for yoga with other people. And then I also get to make people laugh because I've got a sense of humor that you got to throw it in there, spice things up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where you have where can people experience and participate in your yoga?
Well, I teach at Oxygen Yoga, a couple locations, but mainly East Vancouver and Port Moody at the Oxygen Yoga. It's infrared heated. I teach at Chalford House for the Women in Recovery, and I teach at the Last Door. I mean, I'm always willing to do anything, anytime. If people want to learn or experience, like, you just reach out to me. I'm always willing to share.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Victoria. Your story's amazing, and we do recover, and we really appreciate what you do here at Last Door for the guys, and I'm sure Chalford House feels the same way. I mean, helping people in early recovery is not just good for them, but it's also good for you too. So, congratulations on being part of that. So we're going to be logging off pretty soon. Don't forget, everybody, Recovery Day BC is September 10th. New Westminster, 4 stages, lots of activities, thousands of people. It's all about celebrating recovery from mental health issues and addiction. And let's recover out loud. Let's tell everybody in BC recovery is possible to help curb this overdose crisis with recovery-oriented systems of care. And Darren, it's always good to see you. Will I see you tomorrow, Darren? Will I see you, Victoria? You guys coming Intoxicated?
Saturday? Tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I keep thinking it's Friday. I've had this I need to just keep spinning my wheel here.
Yes.
I'm gonna bring this to every show.
I got baseball all day, but recovery baseball.
Yeah. Recovery baseball, another addiction. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio every Thursday, noon to 1, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. And Darren, always good to see you. Victoria, thanks for sharing your courage and your story with us.
And our
Thank you.
thanks to our first guest, Kendall.
And thank you, Kendall. See you at Untoxicated. Bye.